I like when brands take some risk and try to do something different. This idea of visual complication, right? Taking a simple muter movement and then trying to make it look way more complicated than it was.
Jean-Claude Biver told me that every screw in that watch movement is polished.
The first mistake most people make when designing a watch is mostly like the proportions. Like just do something completely different and then people will be like, how men can wear a very tiny little Cartier that was maybe more seen as a woman watch previously. The watch as a product and the community around it is something I really enjoy. So I think there's something very deep and poetic about watches.
Hi, my name is Ken and welcome to the Chronedo podcast, the podcast where we talk about watches, business and life. In this episode, we are joined by Thomas Vonder. He's an expert in designing watches for Swiss watch brands. Enjoy the show. So Thomas, welcome to my podcast and thank you very much that you're taking time for this interview.
You're welcome.
First of all, what watch are you wearing today?
I'm wearing my own creation. So the moon watch, the Mone watch, as it's pronounced in Danish.
Mone.
Mone, yeah.
Mone.
Yeah, so that's a creation I did like 3-4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it together with the Watch Angels community and tried to create a different take on the moon phase, as well as a whole different take on case design.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite unique in its whole construction. It's like a monoblock case, but within
What does that mean? Monoblock case?
Yeah, like it's like one piece case. It's like there's no bezel.
So you cut it out from one piece.
Yeah, so the whole case you see is one piece. And then you have a whole like modular system inside that you can take out.
Oh yeah, I saw that you can reorder them and change them.
Exactly. So it's possible to kind of customize it or change the case. So we have different cases like titanium case and titanium with a blue PVD finish or gunmetal or totally black. So you can kind of make these adaptations very easy and very simple. No tooling necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much the concept. And then also, let's say the inspiration, taking inspiration from the Danish design and as well as mixing it with the Swiss culture of watchmaking.
Yeah.
And that's kind of merged into this watch.
Yeah, actually, that's a question I procured. I wanted to know how you managed to combine these two worlds, like the minimalistic Scandinavian type of design. For sure, that's in your blood and in your DNA.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I studied at the Danish design school in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And of course, let's say the heritage of Danish design is very important. And it's very, let's say, talked about, mentioned many times. So you have no doubt about what kind of legacy you are continuing on in Denmark. But I also have, let's say, things that I don't like about Danish design. Sometimes I think it can sometimes be, let's say, lacking a bit details as well. So I try to find this balance between, let's say, keeping it like minimalistic, as well as when you zoom in on the product, there's still a lot of attention to detail, a lot of small features that, let's say, gives it a bit more depth. So that was my aim. Yeah.
Oh, cool. And if somebody wants to buy a watch of yours, where do they find your watches?
They can buy it on Watch Angels. So there they can configure it so they can make the version that they wish.
Is it also possible to buy two straps?
Yeah. So you can wear a black strap or gray strap, and then you combine it with a black case and a blue dial, for example. And some of them are sold out, but there's still a lot of, let's say, configurations left.
You don't reproduce them?
That's not the plan yet. No, we move on to cover some new concepts.
Cool.
Yeah. But
Yes. And what's the price point of these?
this is around 1,000 Swiss francs.
And then you can buy other cases.
Yeah, so that then you can add that on.
Oh,
So of course the movement is the most expensive part.
yeah.
So, but then the case is quite affordable. That's
Okay.
and you still have 4 selections.
And is there a shop that also selling your watch, or is it all only available?
And the watch only
watch
online. Yeah.
Okay.
So when people want to see it, it's either finding me or find someone who has it.
Yeah.
It's the best way.
And you ship them to the US,
Yeah,
Europe countries?
sure, like everywhere. So doing the sales, I was also surprised how the sales were spread all over the world.
Yes.
Like Japan to US to South Africa to everywhere. So it's interesting to see how like even like a small project like this can go out to so many different parts of the world.
Yes.
That's quite exciting and see. So yeah, we'll see what is next. Working with different ideas. So it's just a matter of, let's say, finalizing those.
Yeah, and for those who are listening to this podcast, you should definitely check out the website. It's watchangels.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there you find the projects, or I found you over Instagram.
Yeah.
Then I clicked on the link and I got to the shop of watches.
Life as Thunder. Yeah, that's my my personal, and then the Thomas Thunder watches. That's for the brand.
So for those who do not know you yet, could you a bit share some insights or something about your journey as a watch designer, or your whole journey as a designer?
Absolutely.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Well, like first of all, I'm not like been interested in watches my whole life, so it's something that kind of came maybe a bit late compared to other people. Perhaps I started like really getting into watches during my studies at the Danish design school, and the story really is that I tried to write to many different companies because I wanted to, let's say, get an internship, or let's say create something, build something. I was a bit tired of just studying.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote to a lot of different companies, and all of them were rejections except for one company. And this one company was like, just by coincidence, a watch company.
Oh. Are you allowed to say the name of that?
Yeah, this was like it was like a low priced watch company in Holland called Vice Watches. So they were producing a label for like Danish design watches. Yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing, you know, to have a Dutch company making Danish design watches. But it was like my first opportunity, and they gave me a ticket to Amsterdam, and I showed them ideas. Like I had very little knowledge about construction and everything. My proportions were also very off. But I proposed some ideas, and then we started like a little collaboration while I was studying. And after that, I kind of thought, let me know more about watches. I want to dig a bit deeper. So I heard about Baselworld, which doesn't exist anymore. But I bought a ticket. I didn't know anyone in Switzerland. I'd never been in Switzerland before. And I just went to Basel to see what it was all about. And that was my first really experience in the watch industry.
Oh, and did you get to know people there from the industry?
It was very difficult. And I think that's also where I realized that it was probably better that I, during the evenings, try to go to some of these parties.
Oh.
So I felt if you went to some of the watch parties, then you could become a bit more social. And if you had a drink, you will also kind of like break a bit your barrier.
Yeah.
So I, one evening, I went to an event for SevenFriday.
Yep.
And that evening, they had like let's say a watch competition. So the competition was that you had to, let's say, create a post on Instagram, and then they would select a winner that got a prize. So I took one of these business cards I had in my pocket, And then I did a sketch of the SevenFriday watch, and then I posted it. And the next day I came back to the same party. They kept doing those parties the whole week.
Oh.
And asked them who won this competition. And apparently it was not a big success, this competition. So I was one of the few who participated. So they gave me the prize and came with this big bottle of champagne. And then I shared it with the company. And a few months later, they gave me an internship.
Oh.
So my internship in Switzerland came from going to a party.
That's
doing
story. When you worked for SevenFriday, did you design the watch there, or because on your website I saw some photos of watches from SevenFriday?
Yeah, that's a few I made. While doing my internship, I didn't create any watches. I was more like doing like ideas of how the brand could expand.
Yeah.
And this was the time also where SevenFriday were considering going into sunglasses. So then I was working on that too, which they eventually ended up doing. But it was first like after my studies, then they offered me a full-time position. So I moved from Denmark to Biel, and then I started working for, let's say, Studio Divine, which was the design studio, but mostly it was SevenFriday.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I work on different versions like the SevenFriday M2B or M1B or the W version as well. So it was kind of a bit
cool,
different. And I like the idea that SevenFriday had at that time. They were very, let's say, progressive in this idea of visual complication, right? Taking a simple Miota movement and then trying to make it look way more complicated than it was. And they were some of the ones who started that trend, right? And they became extremely popular, and their company grew very fast. So it was fun to be a part of that time right there. Yeah.
And after SevenFriday?
Then I was in the company for like 1.5 years. And then I felt that it was time to kind of explore my creativity a bit on my own. So I quit, and then I went to US for a bit, 2 months, just to get some new inspiration. And when I came back to Switzerland, I started, working with my own clients. And that was a tough start. It was very difficult, like, because I had very few people to work with. And
how did you manage to get the first clients?
I think
you went to a party.
Not this time. I think back then I think one of the first ones were like Epson, Epson Group. So I was working through like a design agency in London, and then we worked on Epson. So that was kind of one of the first clients. And at that time, Epson, they had Orient, and then they had also started launching another brand like True Me. It's like a Japanese brand mainly.
Yeah.
So let's say the Japanese company wanted to get some inspiration from Europe and Switzerland. So I tried to give them some inputs.
Was it common back then to work as a freelancer in the design industry?
No, I think
especially for watch brands.
It's a bit difficult because, let's say, many big brands, they have their own designers. So you have to kind of work with these like medium, small size companies where they don't have an in-house designer. Today is a bit different because there's also like some bigger brands where they sometimes need new input, and then they're open for ideas from the outside. But at that time it was very difficult. So it was also a matter of like building my portfolio. So it took some time to, at that moment I mainly had like SevenFriday watches in my portfolio, so I didn't have so much to show. Today, let's say my diversity is much bigger, so it's easier to, let's say, convince someone that I'm able to do it, rather than if you just done one type of watch, then it's difficult to convince someone that you can also do like the complete opposite or something way more complicated.
Quick 15-second ad. Hi, I'm Ken from the Chronedo podcast. I want to let you know that you can join our community, the Chronedo Circle, for exclusive giveaways, behind the scenes, and key takeaways from every episode. Sign up for free at chronedo.com/community. How is it to work with watch brands? Do they first contact you, then you discuss the style of the design that they are looking for? How does it look like? Do they have strict guidelines, design guidelines, or
Yeah, that's a very big question, because it's a mix of everything. Like the way you get in touch with them can be through everything as well. Like it can be an event, it can be LinkedIn, it can be Instagram, or just a recommendation through another person that you know. So like the ways of getting in touch with clients today are like very broad. So it's also important to kind of, let's say, be open on many different, let's say, platforms, many different ways. But
do you know that when they plan to launch a new product, do they first think of what they want and then looking for a designer?
Let's say like sometimes also something I did a lot in the past, then I try to approach them. So, then I would approach them and say, okay, like I think this could be something interesting. Like maybe I even had an idea that I proposed them. Or I would just ask them if they needed, let's say, design help.
Okay.
If it was the other way around, that they approached me, yeah, sure. Then often they would have let's say, a brief. But the brief could be very, let's say, broad. Let's say some of them would be very precise, the exact diameter, the movement, everything. And others would just, let's say, have a kind of simple idea, but you had to develop it into a brief eventually. So in that sense, there's a very big difference between clients and what they come with. Many times they maybe don't have so much information. Yeah.
Okay. So, how much, the CEO of a watch brand, how much is he involved in that design process? Or does it depend if he has an art director or a design director? I don't know how they call it, but
I would say like quite a lot, like, because also depends on the size of the company.
Yes.
But most of the companies that I work with are at a size where the CEO is very involved and take a lot of the decisions, and we discuss a lot about the details. And I think that's a great idea, actually, that the people who run the company are also very involved with the design.
Sure, yeah.
Of course, it's not everyone who can do it. It also depends on their knowledge about watches and where they come from in the watch industry. But I think it's super important because it helps like really making the watch be aligned with the direction of the company. So you have branding, you have the sales team, you have the whole organization, as well as the design. Like if all those things are in a great synergy and that are aligned, then I think you also will have greater results for sure.
And in the end, they get the product or the design that they expected because they are really involved into the process.
Yeah, I wouldn't just like give them a design and then like this is what we do. Yeah. I like to involve them and make sure that we are on the right side of the right direction. And in that sense, then you make sure that everyone is happy, and you don't suddenly have someone who's like left and unhappy with the results. Well, if they're part of the process, then they have the chance to, let's say, make their opinion clear.
Yes.
And not come afterwards and, okay, now we finish the project, we don't like it. Yes. So I think it's great to avoid those mistakes by having people involved. And then it's of course up to me as well to figure out like what should I use in my process and what shouldn't I use, because there are a lot of ideas and you have to choose the right ideas. So that's maybe a bit my job to translate that.
Yeah, to help them out. And after a few years, as I understand, you thought about launching your own product or your own watch.
Yeah, I was working with a company in Ticino, and they asked me if I was interested in doing my own brand.
Is it Watch Angel?
Yeah.
Ah.
So I
Can you explain me what exactly what Watch Angel's doing?
yeah, like it's a project that, let's say, were released around, what is that, like 5 years ago. So the idea behind it is really like crowd manufacturing. So trying to like give the possibilities of creating new watches, let's say with a lower investment. So if someone have a great idea, they could collaborate with Watch Angels. So it's not like a crowdfunding; it's more like a crowd manufacturing.
And where's the difference?
I think it's more like that they have access to the manufacturing. So when you buy something on a crowdfunding page like Kickstarter, there's some, you don't know who is producing it. Here you know who is producing it.
Okay.
Because that's a part of the Watch Angels, because they have access to a manufacturer.
But for example, the one that you designed for Frederick Constant,
yeah,
how did that work? You know, they ask you to design the watch first, or they started to talk to Frederick Constant and then started the project, or how did that came up?
In that project, they had a connection to Frederick Constant, so they had discussed about, let's say, making a new watch together. Also because they both saw like an advantage in combining their forces. And then they came to me and proposed me to create it. But of course, they had some ideas that they wanted to put into this watch. So there was a brief, but it was still quite open. So like, for example, they had already decided to take, for example, the date off. Right, well, all the other world timers previously had the date on, then they wanted to try something new. So there was already some kind of guidelines to follow. But except for that, it was about just getting out and creating something new. Yeah.
And then how did you start to design this watch? How does that process look like?
I think like I tried to look a lot on the previous watches. Like, first of all, understanding the brand identity of Frederick Constant, like, and also maybe the direction that they were going to. So I was trying to look at both the past and the present and the future that they are aiming for. And then trying to make a watch that kind of combine those things, as well as looking at other, let's say, ways of world timers. So I also looked at different clocks and vintage watches to see a bit like how world timers have been done, like over the, let's say, 50, 60 years that they have, let's say, been wristwatches.
And how do you make sure that it doesn't look too much like another watch, like, for example, like the Patek Philippe world timer, you know? No. That's when I see a world timer, always this watch of Patek Philippe comes into my mind, you know, but that's not fair.
No, but that's a good question. Like, it's also a good challenge because, of course, like a world timer in itself has a very distinctive look. So you will, if you look at many different world timers, they have a lot of things in common.
Yes, exactly.
So it's also a matter of like figuring out what could stand out and what could be like special for this watch. Because in some way there's certain things that have to be followed, and since we used the same movement as the previous world timers, a lot of the architecture could not be changed. So it's a bit of balance, and also it can be very difficult sometimes. But that's also where I try to go even more into detail and do details that make it distinct from other watches. If you just take, for example, the let's say the CD disc, like how it's inclined, and
Yes.
there's an engraving between every single time zone. So like just going a bit deeper into building that depth and making a bit more unique in the details as well.
And if you design a watch, that for sure has an impact on the cost of production. How do you manage to be aligned with the guidelines of the brand? Somehow you need to know how much does it, or, do you see the problem?
Yeah, sure. I think this is also a lot to do with experience. Like I would say in the start of my design career, kind of, it was very often that I did something that was impossible, like, and sometimes it can be small details, but you just don't know, right? So if you just design it a little different, then it might halve the cost. But just because you took some kind of decision that was not totally thought through, then it would change the whole price point of the watch.
So you need to talk to the engineers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I try today when I work on a watch, then also try to, let's say, have them as a part of the process.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, I understand much better today what's possible compared to, let's say, 5-10 years ago. So let's say most of my decisions I do today should be able to be realized.
I can remember when I was around 20 years old, I started, or I had the idea to design my own watch, but I didn't had any experience, in designing or in the watch industry. It was just an idea.
Yeah.
And then I started to learn these 3D tools like Autodesk. And it was not easy to learn these. And then I realized, oh, wow, I need to think about this idea.
It's definitely a challenge. Also,
Yeah.
If I think the first mistake most people make when designing a watch is mostly like the proportions.
Yeah.
The proportions are like really important in watches. Like the proportions between the size of the typeface and the hand size, the case size, everything. So to me, like I think a lot of people can use different tools, 3D sketching, but the main thing is actually just understanding the overall proportions of a watch. I think that's a super important thing.
Is there a certain rule that you follow?
I think there probably are, and I'm sure I have some kind of rule, but I think at this point it's just in my head. It's like it's so intuitive in some way that maybe I, let's say, consciously don't really have it in my mind, but I have a lot of decisions I take during a watch. Also a simple thing as the proportion between an hour hand and a minute hand, right? But like something like that, right? If they're too close together, then you might mix them up, and if the hour hand is too little, it also looks a little unbalanced. But if you have it in the position of 8 past 10, then you want to have a good balance. So there's a lot of decisions like that, which a 1 millimeter can make a huge difference. I don't know many industries where, let's say, dimensions can have such a big impact on the, let's say, the look and the expression of the product. Yeah.
And how do you foresee the future trends? I believe it's important for you to think also about the future trends too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, I think also from the outside, sure, the watch industry is quite, let's say, conservative.
Yes.
And things go a bit slower than other industries. But there's still a lot of like experiments done mostly in materials. Materials in watches are probably the most experimental part. And of course, the past few years, we've seen like even more, let's say, development and complicated movements. Right?
And also the sizes of the watches, that changes over time.
Absolutely. Like how you see like how the size of a watch now is decreasing.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yes.
It's like how men can wear a very tiny little Cartier that was maybe more seen as a woman watch previously. So it's interesting how these trends change, and then it takes some time before people kind of accept it, and then they end up doing it themselves. Like, if you look at the SevenFriday period, then those watches were like 46, 48 millimeter, right? So it was some very big watch. And that was 2015, 16. And now you see a completely different trend.
Yeah, and it's only 10 years, Yeah. It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of shrinking in the watch size for sure. And back then it was not so common. But of course, many of these trends are also driven by, let's say, movie stars and famous people who suddenly start wearing it, and then it like spread like rings in water. Just like with the Kachi crash, right? Suddenly it was on the red carpet, and then everyone, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So, I think also trends in the watch industry can change very quickly. So, sure, conservative in many ways, but I think also trends can suddenly appear. And there's also a lot right now, like you see with independent watchmaking, and also the colors of watches. Maybe they become a bit less powerful in the colors now, less vibrant and a bit more earthy. Let's see.
Do you like that trend?
Which one? The new trends?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good that new things are happening. Nice. I think we can also be a bit tired of seeing the same colors over and over again. So I think also it's important that the watch industry have some progress and some change to still stay relevant and interesting. So yeah, absolutely, it's very good to follow these things. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And how does it feel when you walk through the streets of Zurich and you see somebody wearing your watch or the watch that you designed? How does that feel?
I don't know how many in Zurich is wearing my watches, but but no, it's a good feeling when you see someone wearing them, for sure. I'll say particular Zurich might be a little different market than many of my watches.
Yeah.
But no, it's a great satisfaction to see. Or if you go to a watch event and someone
is wearing
and let's say very grateful to it. So you can see that actually use it a lot and care about it.
Second and last ad. If you want to support this podcast and get a free gift, go to chronedo.com/support or simply follow me on Instagram or YouTube and share this episode with your friends. I truly appreciate it. So let's come back to your watch again.
Yes.
So how did you came up with that idea? And can you tell us a bit about the steps you took? Also if somebody out there is thinking about starting his own business, not particularly a watch business, but any other business. Yeah, what would you recommend?
Yeah, well, for me, it was very, let's say, a sudden decision. It was not something I had been thinking so much about. So I felt like I just jumped in the water with both feet, kind of. And sure, I also made mistakes on the way because I had not really started a company or a watch project before. So it was really like I learned a lot from this. I think an important thing was that I also had some really good partners in it, like the factory and with the watch angels. So working with them meant that also I had access to a good engineer that could help us doing the technical parts. So you had like direct access to the factory. So I would say that was a very important thing. Without that, I would have been much more lost, I would say. At least at that stage. Today it's different, but at that time in my life, I still needed to gain some more knowledge as well.
But how did that work? Did you had to invest a lot of money in the beginning, or was it more kind of crowdfunding?
Yeah, like sure, like because the watch was eventually like actually just sold as a rendering.
Yes.
So I made a rendering of the watch. I think my renderings could have been better, but people supported it, and we managed to sell quite a few watches.
Did you market that prototype or that rendering yourself, or was Watch Angels did the main job for that?
They did a lot. Of course, I also had to, let's say, try my best in like suddenly using like Instagram for this.
Did you have a lot of followers or
No,
no?
like I had on my personal account,
Yes.
but not on the
Okay.
watch brand. So it was difficult, and maybe also because I don't. It's not because I enjoy Instagram so much, but I knew it was important, so I tried and being better at it. So of course, in a process like this, there's a lot of things you enjoy, and then there's also sometimes some things that are less fun, but you know that they're necessary.
Mhm.
So it's also you're finding the kind of balance, and make sure that the most important is just you enjoy the whole journey,
Sure.
and that's
That's always the most important thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I did that, and also because it was a great satisfaction to do something
Oh.
on my own, but it was also very difficult because suddenly there was no one else to tell you what was right or wrong.
Yes.
With other watch projects, there's usually a company that give me directions or say if they like it or not. Here it was me asking myself.
Yes.
So that was very difficult, and also trying to understand what did I like about design, what was my design philosophy. And usually that's something I feel like many people maybe get much later in their life. I had to do it very early on, figure out like what my design style was and how I wanted to represent it.
And how many watches did you sold back then?
I think we reached around 150.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
yeah, that's
Cool.
so.
And then you started to launch new variation of the watch, or how did you continue that journey with your watch brand?
Yeah, then sure, of course, the difficulty for me have always been to like balance these two,
Yes.
because working for other brands and then doing my own. So there have also been periods where you suddenly, let's say, put a lot of focus on other companies, let's say developments, and then you forget a bit about your own little baby. So it had been a bit up and down, but now I'm like working on new developments, so that's very good. So want to come up with something new in the next few months, hopefully.
Okay.
We'll see. So yeah, that's the aim. But it also took me some time to find this balance, so I can kind of do the projects for other companies as well as coming up with new ideas for my own. Yeah.
Is it important for you how much you can earn with a job or a project? Is it more the passion?
Yeah, I would say like my own watch project was like passion driven.
Okay.
Yeah, like what kept me alive is the other watch projects for other companies.
Yes.
That has been let's say the main thing. That's also why I had to put some time into those projects. And then this has been a development on the side, which of course can be difficult. But of course it would be nice one day to put more time into it. But it's just a matter of finding that balance. Yeah.
And how much time goes into one project, like designing a whole watch for a brand? It depends for sure.
That can change a lot.
Yeah. But for example, the Frederick Costner.
Yeah, I think probably around a year, 1.5 year.
You fully work on that?
And not fully. From the brief
Yes.
to that, that's probably like 1 to 1.5 year. Yeah, around. Because then you also have to do prototypes. Prototypes take quite a long time. And then when you get the prototypes, you do, let's say, adaptations, and so there's a lot of phases within this.
Is the first prototype printed with 3D printers? Or is it the first prototype already with steel or the metal?
I actually don't. Yeah, I think maybe we did one 3D print.
And then
just to feel the proportions. But in the end, the best is to get a metal piece, so you really also feel the weight. You you can kind of sense a bit more the finishing and everything. So yeah, 3D printing can be good sometimes, but it really depends on the watch and the project as well.
I visited the factory of Formex, and you know him, Rafael Granito, and his father's company. They are producing watch components, and he told me that 3D printing is coming up really fast in that industry.
Absolutely, yeah, sure. Like it's also depend on if it's just for like, you know, like a mock-up, or it's they actually watch you want to 3D print. A lot of companies have tried 3D print watches, like ready for sale, but of course there's also a lot of difficulties and challenges where 3D printing still have to improve on that. I actually did my degree project was about 3D printing in the watch industry. so I find it very interesting. But for now, we have mostly just used it for mock-ups.
Yeah. Back then, when I designed my watch, I 3D printed it because I thought it's cool. I cannot afford to produce it, but I can afford to have a 3D print.
That's a great, like, they're not so expensive. Like
but then, I saw dimensions and their proportions are not that good, so I should. But I stopped with that.
It's a good way to test it and just to have a sense of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes I also made it, and then I walked around with a 3D print just to feel it with the size, and if the crown is too sharp, then I go back, make it a bit more round. So you can still like use it for some tests for sure. But it's let's say it's limited how much you can get out of it. There's a few things, but the rest you have to get from a prototype.
And the watches that you sell, do you have to pack them, or do you have a service provider for them?
That also happens through watching shows.
So they provide the full package.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
it's a good service. In the end, you pay for that for sure. When you sell a watch, they keep something for. They also have to live.
Absolutely. So, but then it made me focus on what I'm good at. Right?
Exactly.
And working on the designs and new creations. And I think, for me, it's often better for me to focus on what I'm good at than going into something where I might fail a bit too much, you know, or spend too much time on something that doesn't work out. When it comes to design, then I like to experiment and go out and try new things. But I think going into, let's say, and spend a lot of time on accounting or stuff like that, I think that's a bit of waste of time.
And how do you find inspiration? Do you also go out into the nature and find their inspiration? Because the last podcast I interviewed Jean-Claude Beaver, and I think he told me, or I read that in one of his books, that he talked to Sheila Chenta, and he told him every color that you find in nature, every color combination that you find in nature, you can put that on your watch. If it's not out there in the nature, you shouldn't put it on the watch because people will not like it. But nature, you know, made everything perfect in our eyes.
No, for sure. Like nature has a lot of harmony, and if you can find inspiration in that, for sure. And the same with a bit like the proportions. Everything in nature is made with a purpose and to fit in a way into each other. So I believe that for sure.
And if a watch enthusiast never heard of you before, how would you describe your design language or your style of watches?
That's a good question, because I feel like my style is also on a journey in itself. It's changing a lot. Sure, I probably have some signatures, like, but if you look at the things I created over the years, there's a lot of different things, and also the things I'm going into now are very different.
In terms of what?
I would say like different in complexity. Also.
More complex.
Yeah. Okay. And also going more into complications of the movement, starting like working on more the movement bridges. And so now I'm taking kind of my design to like the next level. So it also means that my design language might adapt a little to these things. But yeah, I would say in the past it was very much focused on, let's say, complexity.
Okay.
But now I'm also trying to, let's say, clean it up a bit and try to, let's say, have focus on specific functions rather than just crowding up the dial. Yeah, and that's probably what I did a bit in the past. A lot of things were happening on the dial of the watch, and I think as older I get, I start appreciating more like balance and a bit more harmony in the dial, and that's also what I'm aiming towards now. Yeah.
Can you name the brands or the watch models that you designed or working on, projects that you can name?
Yeah, there's some who probably don't want to be named, but yeah, like after SevenFriday, I worked a lot with the REC, which was this the Danish watch company, so I designed a lot of their watches. Then worked with Cyrus, horology for the super seat, so I did the case and the movement design as well of the micro rotor. So that was a great challenge for me as well, because at that moment I had not really worked so much into the movement. So working with them on designing the new micro rotor was a great experience.
But designing a micro rotor is pretty difficult for sure, because in the end you need to follow the guidelines of the brand, also with the weight and everything.
Well, of course, like they gave me a lot of guidelines. They have great engineers and they have a great team of watchmakers and like the technicalities they can definitely, let's say, deliver me. So for me, it was more like coming up with ideas of how it could match the brand identity and create the elements, so the bridges, the micro rotor, and for example, trying to open up to the balance wheel, so you saw as much as the balance wheel as you could. So there was like different points that I tried to do in collaboration with them, and then also trying to match that movement with the case. So it was a big project, but a lot of fun for sure.
Sorry, I did not interrupt you when you were talking about the brands you worked with.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, then except for that, yeah, other ones, a lot of, let's say, startup companies as well.
Yes.
So also, for example, through the Watch Angels, did a lot there. Then chronedo, chronedo, like Jean-François Mojon, works on a lot of like complications for the watch industry. So I worked with him for new ideas and modules as well. And for example, Rwanda, new movement developments.
Cool.
So it's quite broad, and now also like Chapek, which is more like a high-end independent watch brand. So it's very diverse. So I like the, let's say, the variation and adapting to different brand styles. So it's a very good challenge to constantly kind of adapting and at the same time bringing something new and fresh to the brand.
For sure, it's not easy to be creative when you have to be creative. Or can you train that? Is it like a muscle, or is it a talent, or is it both? You know,
that's a good question. I think I often have many ideas in my head. So whatever brand I would work with, I would instantly have something to do. If it's a good idea or not, that's another question. But like, there's always something come to mind. There's always something when I look at a watch. There's always a question coming to my head. Okay, maybe this looks a little weird. Maybe the case is a bit too big, or it's a bit too round, or so. I always have some thoughts that I have. So if I suddenly have to create something, it's just a matter of expressing those on the paper. And since I've been drawing since I was like 10 years old, drawing is not so difficult for me. So it's more a matter of having the idea, and if I have the idea, it's just a matter of putting it on the paper.
Mm.
Like drawing it correctly is not so difficult. It's more like getting that.
Interesting.
So it's more just a way of communicating.
Yeah.
Like drawing is a bit like a language.
And do you think AI or other technologies will replace your job, or does AI already support you?
I've used AI for some things, and just because I found it interesting to explore.
Play around.
And but of course, when I went into it, it was very important to understand what it could do for me, and like figure out what was the advantages. And some things I used it for was like also inspiration. Like if I was creating a mood board, I could create the pictures with AI instead of searching on Google for hours.
Sure. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, so I tried to find out how it could be useful in my process without me spending too much time on it. Because if you sit and spend hours on AI, like maybe you could just have done it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So there's some things that was useful, but let's say like drawing or creating watches is still something where AI makes a lot of flaws. It can be used to maybe some bigger ideas, but if you go into detail, it's not so useful, I think. But maybe in some years,
future,
sure.
But maybe also in the future, I can imagine some brands will have that marketing claim: we don't use AI for designing or something. It's hand designed or designed by humans.
Absolutely.
That would be something I can see some would pay for.
Yeah, like just as like making watches by hand.
Yeah.
You also want design by hand. Right?
Yeah. And in the luxury industry, it's like you don't need a watch, but anyway, you buy it because you appreciate the craftsmanship behind it, and
absolutely,
that's why. Yeah,
I think it will definitely take over some areas, but at the same time, when it comes to creation of a watch, like there still has to be someone controlling the AI.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
So unless it can think by itself and figure out how watch fits the current trends and the technicalities, but except for that, you still have to come up with a great idea where you can control the AI to, let's say, evolve this as you wish. So it's not the harmony where it should be right now. I think in the future it might become a bigger part of the process, but there still needs some development, I feel like.
Which goals do you have right now for yourself, for your career as a designer, and for your brand? Maybe do you have brands that you would like to work with? Is there a specific brand like?
Right now, I feel I'm working with some great brands. So I have full focus on making them evolve.
Cool.
So I don't really have so much focus on what is next, rather than in my next watch projects. So I think my main focus is to just continue evolving into making the watch like inside out. So I learn also a lot about, let's say, the inside of mechanics, which I didn't know so much about in the past. So as much as I'm learning now, is also binding that together with the exterior, which was my main focus in the past. So I think that is definitely one of my aims, to do more of these projects where you really design the whole watch from the inside out in collaboration with great watchmakers and great engineers. So you really make like a great collaboration.
Okay.
I think that's my main project of doing this. I think, for example, it's super interesting now how so many independent watchmakers comes up. Like a lot of watchmakers who finish school and then they launch their own watch, and I think that's super inspiring. And working with them could also be interesting.
Creating together a watch.
Yeah, like because they have a lot of creativity. They're young. They are willing to also challenge maybe the existing culture of watchmaking. So I think there's a lot of great talent which are out there and do great things. But of course, a watchmaker is not a designer. So
Yeah.
so it's also like
You need both.
yeah.
We
So
have a great product.
absolutely. So I think in the past when I came into the watch industry, I also back then I tried to approach watchmakers, but they were also a bit kind of protective.
Yes.
And I also understood that not all of them were interested in working with a designer. But if you look at, let's say, the companies that have success today as an independent watch brands, then it's mainly the ones who have great design, right? If you look at MPNF, Urwerk, Dibetun, them great designers working for them. And I think that's also a great part of the success.
I believe a lot of the buying decision depends on the brand first, and also about the design. It's about the design, how the watch looks and feels on your wrist. So
Absolutely.
you have an important part.
Absolutely, for sure. It's the collaboration is very important. Like I, in a process, I don't want to like tell people what to do. Like I like the collaboration, so I also listen a lot. And if a watchmaker or engineer have some things that they don't like or are against, then I'm also very open to change it. So I don't want to be so protective about my work that people have to do what I say. That's not the way for me to collaborate. For me, it's super important that a collaboration is about a group of people where everyone is like heard.
And what's your favorite watch in terms of design? One that you design, maybe, or somebody else design?
I think I have a quite a broad interest. Like I sure I like Dibitun, for example. I think they do great things, but I also like smaller independent brands where just coming out
and they try something new.
Yeah,
because of that, or
yeah, and that's like so many of those, right? Where it's just a one or two man company. So I sure I like some of the independent brands have grown a lot. They're interesting, like MBNF, but they also reach a size where they're not so unknown anymore. And I think what I find interesting is these companies where you never heard of them, but they do something stunning. And that's kind of what I find interesting at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. So, to finish this podcast episode, would you like to tell us something that is important for you, or?
I think we've been quite all around. I think for me, it's great to share, like my work and also my vision about watches. And of course, like for me, it's like the focus now is on, say, continuing doing something better. Like when I finish a watch, I'm always ready for the next one.
Yes.
So I that's maybe also the problem. Sometimes I cannot always appreciate the watches I create because my mind is already on the next one.
Okay.
Which is a bit unfortunate sometimes because maybe I don't see it in the same way as let's say customers do.
Yes.
Because I've been looking at the watch for
Many hours.
many hours or maybe years, right? But I appreciate doing this. Like it's also why I ended up in the watch industry. Like the attention to detail and the craftsmanship and the long-lasting creation, that you create something that can last never, and it doesn't just end up in the trash somewhere like your phone will do or many other electronics. Lots of stuff. Then watches is something that like is kind of existing for years and will outlive most of us and end up on the wrists of someone else. So I think there's something very deep and poetic about watches, which is also the reason why I ended up in the watch industry. I had a lot of other options that I could have chosen to pursue, but the watch as a product and the the community around it is something I really enjoy. Lots of great people, a lot of passion, a lot of interesting experiences. So it's great to be a part of and share that through my creations.
So thank you very much, Thomas,
Thank
for
you.
taking your time for this interview. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join our community, the Chronedo Circle. Sign up for free at chronedo.com/community. In the Chronedo Circle, you'll get exclusive giveaways, limited promotions from my podcast guests, and access to community chats where you can connect with other entrepreneurs and watch enthusiasts. Does that sound interesting for you? Then head over to chronedo.com/community and sign up for free. Stay tuned. More episodes with exciting guests are on the way. See you in the next episode, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram and YouTube. I appreciate that. Thanks.